All right. Time for a little bow and arrows. A lot of stuff going on recently in the news. You have the Epstein files coming out, and you know what's being disseminated. This a massive amount of redactions going on, and it's a lot of people are, oh, you shouldn't really focus on this, and I guess Pam Bondi stating at one point if they prosecuted everybody, the whole system would collapse. Think about that statement in and of itself. The system would collapse, right? You look at the massive fraud going on in Minnesota, California, you're going to find it everywhere, right? And that's why this video is, I'm putting it out there, why everybody over 40 should be a conspiracy theorist. Because, we grew up in a time where we seen a lot of things happen, right? And later on down the road, when the truth came out, the people that were conspiracy theorists, they were outside of the norm and going against the narrative that was being fed to everybody, right? They were being called conspiracy theorists, right? Because of the fact that, they didn't totally agree with the narrative that was being put out en masse about things, and questioning what was really going on, and that's our government wouldn't do that, or these people wouldn't do that, or this entity or this group wouldn't do that. And then a lot of times it turns out, yeah, they would. And you look at what's going on now, and you see what's happening, and you're like, oh no, they didn't do that for that reason. It's like, yeah, they did. You know what I mean? We're finding out that these things are true. They're not conspiracies anymore, right? And I would like to, I grew up in a time where I questioned it. I remember being a kid and watching a commercial for toothpaste. And part of the commercial was 9 out of 10 dentists agree that fluoride's good for you. And I remember looking at my brother and going, what does that mean, 9 out of 10? He goes, well, out of every 10 people, 9 dentists agree that it's good for you. And I was like, okay, well, why does the other one not agree with it? Like, what does he know? You know what I mean? Like, what does he know, and why does he say it's not good? And in our modern times, it's no longer 9 out of 10, it's 4 out of 5. And if you think about that, that's another 10% that have left saying that this is good for you. Now it's 8 out of 10, right? Look at those numbers. So if you have 10,000 dentists, 2,000 of them now don't think it's safe for you. So what is it? Are these 8,000 being paid to say it's good for you? Like, what's really going on? Like, think about that, And that's a minor, well, not minor, but you know what I mean when you think about it in the grand scheme of what's going out there, the child sex trafficking, the pedophile rings, and now, people are coming out talking about these satanic rituals that these people are a part of and what they're doing. And, I've, in my last video, I talked about some of the things that were found out, with those kids at the preschool, right? That happened a long time ago. And I was, telling everybody, I'm like, you don't got to believe me. Go look at it yourself. Go do the research yourself. You don't got to believe a single word I say. But if I've done anything, I've at least planted a seed. You know what I mean? Like, there's a little spark going where they'll take it and run with it themselves and find out for themselves and believe what they want to believe, right? it's so crazy, you know what I mean, that to think, and I know there was a lot of indoctrination in the schools, and that's why we have so many people in their 20s and 30s, and they're just completely delusional about what really goes on and who's on the right side, who's on the wrong side. I've never been one. I would like to think I'm a lot more conservative in my views than most, but I don't believe like it's, because I'm conservative, that it's all the liberals and everybody on the left or the Democrats that are all the evil people. I've always said it was both sides. I always said once they close the doors in Washington, it's pretty much us against them, right? Like they are elitist in their own minds, right? They're above us. The laws don't apply to them, right? Laws for thee, but not for me kind of thing. You see that in the Stock Act that they did. There was almost a unanimous vote. Think about that. When the Stock Act came up and they voted for themselves to be able to insider trading, it was almost a unanimous vote. Now, did everybody act on it? No. But I think there's a lot of people, you know what I mean? And there's people that are being called out on both sides of the aisle for using that and utilizing that, right? Same thing like, for what, I don't remember her name, but she went to prison for it. Martha Stewart. There you go. So, being that, and I'm part Native American, so we've always been kind of anti-government, which is always so funny to me when I had a sister of mine that asked me who she should vote for in the 2020 election, and I told her, do the research, you know what I mean? Because I knew some things, and she came back later on, and she's like, well, I know who I'm going to vote for, and I go, oh yeah, I go, so what did you find? Thinking, right, that she went and did the research, and she says, oh no, my daughter, told me to vote this way, and I'm going to go with what she said, right? No research at all. And, Native Americans being anti-government, she picked the candidate that was nothing but government. His whole career was politics, right? And I would think more of the problem than the solution. But, that's what it was, right? Like, she wasn't willing to go and really research, the people that were out there to vote for president. And, it honestly, that I kind of grew distant from her. And she was, one of my favorite, sisters. Like, I grew distant because it's like, you know what I mean? Like, that was just laziness. And, like, then you want to talk orange hair man bad, right? Really? Like, you didn't even do the research to know one way or the other. So, it kind of boils down when I think people old, like, I'm well over 40, but I think people in that age should have had a lot more ability to do their own thinking, right? We know a lot of the younger generations have been indoctrinated and they don't think for themselves in spite of the fact that they say that they do. They don't. They're just, they're like little baby birds, and the propaganda is the mama bird just, and they're just eating it up, what's it regurgitated to them, and then they spit it out and try to act like it's independent thought, and it's like, no, this is your brainwashing, showing itself. But, all this stuff that's going on now, and all these people are like, holding their head in their hands, like, this can't be real, it can't be to this level. It's like, yeah, it's always been to that level. It's always been to that level, right? It's just people aren't willing to see it. I had a buddy of mine one time, we were out fishing, and, you fish, so depending on where you're at, sometimes you got a lot of time to just sit and wait, right? Here, fishy. And so we got into a conversation one time, and, being the realist that I am, I'm like, telling him these things that I see. And I had been tested at one point in time, and I was tested as what they call a spatial reasoner. You can look it up. But I started, kind of laying this down, and my buddy was just looking at me, and he, at the end, when I was done, he just like looked at me and he shook his head. And he goes, man, I believe everything you're telling me. He goes, it makes logical sense. You know what I mean? Like it's not like wild, outlandish what you're saying when you break it down the way you did. He goes, but for everybody's sake, he goes, I hope you are wrong. And I said, look, buddy, for everybody's sake, I hope I'm wrong too. Right? But it's how I see it. And, this was like 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, talking with my buddy out fishing. And it's sad to say on how many different points I was completely right. And so it was always in my mind, it's like, well, people of our age, like, we should be more discerning, right? That's why I say everybody over 40 should be a conspiracy theorist. Like, how do you blindly follow this? I watch news clippets and I see these older, 60s, 70s that are so far left leaning, and I'm like, oh, those were the privileged rich kids. You know what I mean? From their time. And, part of their way of thinking was always sheltered, right? And kind of misguided and misled because of their pampered lifestyle. And I think a lot of the people that grew up at a little bit tougher time, which I'd like to think that I did, you know what I mean? Like, we were, when I was young, we were out of the Vietnam War, we were just getting out of that. And we were seeing a lot of these quote unquote hippies that were, protesting the military coming back. And, one of the reasons my dad kind of moved away from the mainstream world was because of that, and he went out and, met my mom on the reservation and started that life. But, we're kind of operating in this world where, it's, unfortunately, it's common knowledge about all of these bad things. And the Epstein files coming out, and we see the fraud of all these billions of dollars. I mean, think about that. $1 billion is 1,000 millions. And they're estimating $12 billion just in Minnesota alone in fraud. And that's going to be even larger when you go to places like Florida, where they're saying it's happening under DeSantis's watch, which is scary. California under Newsom's watch, which is not shocking at all. Like, that's like a given, right? Pretty much. I'm sure it's going to be in Oregon. It's sure it's going to be in Washington. These places where it's, kind of, they out of nicety, they allow these things to happen for fear of upsetting somebody's feelings, right? That's crazy. And with that kind of money operating out there like that, they're saying some of the fraud in Minnesota has gone to terrorism, right? So that's, somebody died, right? Like, these thefts are costing people's lives, and let's get it right, people. Let's not act like little children, right? Living in an imaginary world, right? These things happen. That is the reality. Very wealthy, elite people, a lot of them got into the position they're in because they had somebody taken out. Let's quit playing these dumb games. It's what it is. And I think, Pam Bondi's saying if they prosecute everybody, the system will collapse. Maybe it's time for a hard reset. Maybe that's what it's time for. A hard reset. Get all these people out of there. Who cares what side of the aisle? Who cares who's their buddies? Right? If they did it, they didn't care about us. Why should we care about them? All right. And on that note, I will end this and talk to you guys later. Bye.